Hello everyone, it's great to have you back again. In my previous video I explained how the ALP works like a religious cult. In this video I'll look at even more ways that they behave like a cult. I was driving through Dandenong recently, about to turn onto the Frankston-Dandenong Road. Staring me in the face at the intersection was a sticker saying, "Don't trust Sky News." I thought, why would anyone want to put something up like that in front of drivers? I think most people know that you have to take everything our media says with a large grain of salt. But someone wanted to voice their opinion about one particular news network. Why? I think most people have a negative view of our news networks because of their bias, inaccuracy, and government influence. This is not just confined to any one network. So why single out Sky News Australia? I went online to see who was selling these stickers. Please see the website at link 1 in the description below. On this site all sorts of stickers are available, but all are directed at only 2 news outlets. What they say are things like, "Don't read the Australian," "F the Herald Sun," "Don't read the Herald Sun." All these stickers are critical of and warn people from watching just 2 news outlets. So what is special about these 2 news outlets? I think the Australian newspaper tries to be unbiased and present both sides of the story, and the Herald Sun is a right-leaning news outlet. So who would object to them, and who can't cope with what they have to say? Are we really so simple that we can't see their obvious points of view? Why would anyone think people need to be warned about these 2 news outlets and not others? For example, why aren't the ABC or SBS or The Age included in the list? They are just as biased, tell only part of the story, and are clearly pro-ALP. Why not warn people of these also? Please see the 2 links provided at point 1 in the description below. I think it can be seen from the first web page at point 1 in the description that these stickers are prepared and sold by an extremist left-wing group. Please take a look at their website. See how they mock the free market and are proud to be like the Chinese CCP. Clearly, they're left-wing fanatics. Look at their thinly veiled encouragement to break the law. They write, "Anyway, it would be an absolute disaster if these started appearing all over Melbourne. Rupert Murdoch would hate that. Absolutely do not do that." Why do the political left want to warn people from reading and listening to 2 news outlets? In my previous video I pointed out how the ALP treats its supporters just like a religious cult would. If you think about what's going on with these warnings, I think you'll see that this is just the ALP again behaving like a fanatical religious cult. This is because most cults try to control the flow of information to their followers. To many religious cults, those outside the cult are described as blind or liars or corrupt and can't be trusted. Because they are outsiders and not true believers, they need to be avoided and certainly not trusted or listened to. Of course, religious cults have good reason to control what their followers listen to. Otherwise, their followers might hear something that challenges their beliefs or their trust in their leaders. And before you know it, followers might start to see through the cult's nonsense and start to see the cult for what it really is. Cults simply cannot allow that to happen. So they teach, or preach, that you can't trust outsiders. You can only trust the cult leaders and the cult faithful. As I mentioned in my previous video, the ABC is the place the ALP faithful go to hear the latest ALP doctrine and teaching on all sorts of current issues. And as I said, the ABC is like a church to the ALP faithful. What they hear on the ABC they accept and believe and then go out and repeat. Also, the Age newspaper serves a similar function to the ABC. So there is little wonder why the Age and the ABC do not get their own stickers. The problem the ALP has is that other news outlets, like the Australian or Herald Sun, might present stories that challenge the beliefs of the ALP faithful. And, just like a cult, the ALP simply can't stand for that. It appears that if you say things that threaten or challenge the beliefs of the ALP faithful, then in Melbourne you get a sticker. And one day may be confronted by hysterical ALP supporters who believe and preach that you can't be trusted and should not be listened to. Also notice one other thing. Notice how this group is proud to associate themselves with and copy the CCP of China. They say, "We're like the CCP." Really? Let me ask this. What would happen to you in China if you said something the CCP did not like? Would you get stickers appearing all over Shenzhen or Beijing warning others not to trust what you say? I doubt it. In China, if you say something the CCP does not like, you'll probably get a visit from the police and have to face their threats, accusations and warnings. And if you refuse to comply, you may be disappeared. When you are disappeared, you'll most likely end up in some type of gulag. Yes, China still has gulags for dissidents, just like Russia did decades ago. And when you comply and learn to behave yourself, you might even be undisappeared. We see these left-wing sticker people are proud to be like the CCP. That is amazing. It seems if they get the chance, they'd do to us exactly what the CCP does to Chinese dissidents. But for now, all they can do is put stickers up warning the ALP faithful not to trust these news outlets. Of course, this left-wing group is completely mad. I wonder how they'd like it if they ran foul of the CCP and ended up being disappeared. Many left-wing people ended up in the gulags in the old Soviet Union. I wonder how they would like it if they were imprisoned in some Chinese CCP gulag. If the ALP was on the side of right, truth and integrity, they would not need to worry about being exposed. But clearly the ALP has many skeletons in the closet. Branch stacking is one. Funneling government money to their supporter base is another. Despising and mistreating people who disagree with them, as was clearly done during COVID-19, is another. Remember how the ALP had the Victorian police treat protesters. Compare how the ALP treated the BLM protesters and how they treated other protesters that were not part of the ALP supporter base. With the BLM, the police went down on their knees in support. With other protesters, the ALP sent in the riot squad, and as Avi Yemeni reported, they assaulted people, arrested them, and invented false charges. The difference is obvious. It seems there's a lot of cracks in the ALP ideology and in what they do that need to be covered up and kept from the ears of their supporter base. It appears that if you let the ALP faithful do their own reading and let them think for themselves, it may end up in disaster with people giving up on the ALP. This is why this fanatical leftist group has their stickers and has made it their job to protect the ALP faithful from anyone who may present some ugly truth about what the ALP is really like and what they actually do. I think you can see how the ALP is again behaving just like a fanatical religious cult. And there are a few other things to consider. Sky News Australia say they are an opinion channel and not a news channel. Presenters such as Andrew Bolt and others clearly give their opinion on current affairs. Surely everyone can see that. And Sky News is not something to be mistrusted. Andrew Bolt often reports things that need to be heard. Please see link 4 in the description for an example of something that everyone should really hear. Also, reporters like Peter Credlin of Sky News might present a real problem for the ALP. For example, Peter Credlin exposed how Daniel Andrews deliberately caused the COVID-19 virus to escape from the quarantine hotels in early 2020, something that eventually led to the deaths of over 800 elderly people in Victoria, as the Coat inquiry stated. Please see link 2 in the description, from around 16 minutes 10 to around 18 minutes, for all the incriminating evidence. Also, let me give you a summary of what happened. It revolves around the abattoir called Cedar Meats. Cedar Meats was the first COVID-19 outbreak or mega cluster in Victoria, as it was called in the video. You may have expected Cedar Meats workers to be placed in the quarantine hotels, just like the returning travellers from overseas. But the workers of Cedar Meats were given special privileges. Unlike other people who were kept in the quarantine hotels, Daniel Andrews gave a special favour to his trade union mates. Cedar Meats workers were allowed to come and go from the quarantine hotels as they wished. They could return home, travel around and carry the disease to whoever they came in contact with, be it family, friends or others. The quarantine hotels were entirely voluntary for them. They could come and go as they pleased and then see whoever they liked. And as we saw, the first outbreaks of COVID-19 in Victoria were in the western and northern suburbs. Cedar Meats is in Brooklyn, in the western suburbs. All that was needed was for the Cedar Meats workers to return home. Once COVID-19 got into the community, it spread everywhere. It escaped because of the politics of our Premier, Daniel Andrews. You may recall he said his government followed the medical advice. So did they follow the medical advice when they let people known to be infected with COVID-19 loose in the western and northern suburbs? Was that following medical advice, It was clearly following the politics and had nothing to do with any medical advice. And the scheming of our Premier gets even dirtier. Annelies van Diemen was then the Deputy Health Minister. She signed the directive to allow Cedar Meats workers to come and go as they please from the quarantine hotels. See the video in link 2 for all the sordid details. But I doubt she originated that directive. At the time, her boss, Brett Sutton, and the Premier, Daniel Andrews, and the Department of Health were all trying to get the quarantine hotels going. So would she write a directive by herself on her own authority without consulting with anyone that would undermine, that's right, undermine and sabotage all the work her boss and the Premier were doing? I doubt it. No one in their right mind would sabotage their own career by issuing such an unauthorized, stupid, and medically reckless directive. In my view, most likely she was directed to write it. And I also doubt that her boss, Brett Sutton, would have directed her to write that memo on his own authority alone. Again, would Brett Sutton undermine and sabotage all the work that the Department of Health and his boss, Daniel Andrews, were doing by issuing such a medically reckless directive on his own authority without discussions with his boss? I doubt it. All that's left is Daniel Andrews and the fact that he authorized that directive and undermined and sabotaged his own quarantine hotels just so that he could do a special favour to his trade union supporter base. A favour that led to the deaths of 800 elderly Victorians, some of whom no doubt were related to his trade union supporter base. Of course, the ALP doesn't want these grubby details to get out amongst their supporter base. It might cause some ALP supporters to stop and think and ask what the ALP is really like and just how low they can stoop. I think this whole miserable event is one very good reason why the ALP doesn't want their followers to listen to Sky News. You might remember how it used to be said that the best anti-communist is an ex-communist. Well, the same is true with the ALP. The best anti-ALP person is an ex-ALP supporter. I know someone who walked away from the ALP years ago. I don't know his reasons, but now he loathes and deeply mistrusts the ALP. He knows what they're really like and what they're capable of. So the ALP are desperate to stop their sheep from leaving the pen. They might become wolves who turn on them. So, just like a cult, they try to control the flow of information to their supporter base as best they can. In short, the ALP behave like a religious cult, frightened of the cracks in their ideology, their actions and their crimes. Now, thank you again for your time, and all the best.